You know how some people say age is just a number? Well, my mother took that phrase and turned it into a weapon. For 7 years, she used the same excuse every single time she destroyed something I loved. "Your father broke me," she'd say, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. "I'm just trying to remember who I was before he took everything from me." The thing is, there's always context missing from her version of events. Always a chapter she conveniently forgets to mention when she's playing the victim. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm 26 years old now. But this story begins when I was 14, living in a small town outside Portland, Oregon. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and secrets have a half-life of about 15 minutes, unless of course you're charming enough to make people look the other way. My mother, Victoria, though she insisted everyone call her Tori because Victoria sounds so old, was 43 when this all started. She looked 35, acted 25, and destroyed lives like it was an Olympic sport. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start with the truth about my father. His name was Robert Mitchell, and yes, he left us for a younger woman. Her name was Jennifer. She was 27 and worked in his law firm's paralegal department. That part of my mother's story is true. What she never mentions is the 18 months before he left. I remember the first time I saw my father with a black eye. I was 13, coming downstairs for breakfast, and there he was, sitting at the kitchen table with an ice pack pressed to his face. Mum was making pancakes like nothing had happened, humming along to the radio. "What happened to your eye, Dad?" I asked, sliding into my usual seat. "Walked into a cabinet door," he said quickly. Too quickly. Wasn't paying attention. Mum turned from the stove, spatula in hand, and smiled. But it wasn't her real smile, the one I'd seen in old photos from before I was born. This was her newer smile, the one that looked perfect, but never quite reached her eyes. "Your father's always been clumsy," she said sweetly. "Haven't you, honey?" I didn't understand then. Not really. Over the next year and a half, I'd see more accidents. A split lip from tripping on the stairs, bruised ribs from falling in the shower, scratches on his arms that he explained away as injuries from yard work. The night everything came to a head, I was 14. I woke up to shouting, not unusual in our house by that point, but this time was different. This time I heard something that sounded like a slap, followed by my father's voice, strained and desperate. "Victoria, please, not again." I crept to the top of the stairs and peered down into the living room. What I saw has been burned into my memory ever since. My mother had my father backed against the wall, and she was hitting him. Not slapping, punching. Closed fists against his chest, his arms when he tried to block her. "You're worthless," she hissed. "Absolutely worthless. You can't even give me a decent life. Look at this house. Look at what I've become because of you." "Victoria, Sarah might hear—" "Sarah?" Mom laughed, but it was a terrible sound. "You think she doesn't know what a failure you are. She sees it every day, every single day." I must have made a noise, because suddenly they both looked up. My father's face was a mixture of shame and relief. My mother's expression was harder to read, anger certainly, but also something that looked almost like satisfaction. "Sweetie," Mum said, her voice instantly softening, "you should be in bed. Your father and I were just having a discussion." But I'd seen what I'd seen. 3 days later, my father moved out. A month after that, I met Jennifer for the first time at a supervised lunch my father's lawyer had arranged. She was young, yes, but she was also kind. And when she shook my hand, I noticed something that made my stomach turn. She was nervous, actually nervous to meet me. This woman, who my mother had painted as a home-wrecking seductress, was scared of disappointing a 14-year-old girl. The divorce was ugly. My mother filed first, claiming emotional abandonment and infidelity. She had a good lawyer, paid for with money from my grandmother's estate, and she knew how to play the victim. She cried in the courtroom, talked about how she'd given my father the best years of her life, how she'd sacrificed her career dreams to support his education. What she didn't mention was the abuse. My father's lawyer tried to bring it up, but without proof, without police reports or medical records, it became a he said, she said situation. And in 2011, in a small Oregon town, nobody wanted to believe that an attractive woman in her 40s was beating her husband. The judge, a woman in her 60s who looked at my mother with something like sympathy, awarded Mom the house, a generous alimony payment, and primary custody of me. My father got alternate weekends and Wednesday dinners. The Wednesday after the custody ruling, Dad picked me up for our scheduled dinner. We went to the diner on Main Street, the one with the red vinyl booths and the jukebox that still played actual records. We sat in silence for a long time, both of us picking at our burgers. Finally, I broke. Dad, I saw what she did that night. I saw her hitting you. He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed behind his glasses. For a moment, I thought he might cry. Instead, he reached across the table and took my hand. Sarah, he said quietly, there are some things that are complicated, adult things that— Don't, I interrupted. Don't do that. Don't treat me like I'm a child who can't understand. I saw what I saw. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. I tried to get help, called the police twice. Both times they laughed, Sarah, said I should be grateful to have such a beautiful wife. One officer actually asked me if I'd done something to deserve it. That's not fair. No, he agreed. It's not. But that's the world we live in, and He stopped, swallowed hard. I couldn't stay anymore, not without losing myself completely. But Sarah, and this is important, I didn't leave you. I would never leave you. Except in a way, he did. Because 2 weeks after that conversation, my mother told me something that changed everything. We were having breakfast, just the two of us in that big house that suddenly felt too empty. Mum was scrolling through her phone, sipping her coffee, when she looked up and said, almost casually, "You know your father thinks you encouraged me to hit him, right?" I froze, my spoon halfway to my mouth. "What?" "Oh, yes," she continued, setting down her coffee cup. "He told his lawyer and the judge that you used to laugh when I defended myself against his verbal abuse. That you'd say things like, 'Give him what he deserves, Mom.' Really damaging stuff." "That's a lie. I know, sweetie." She reached across and patted my hand. "But he believes it. He actually believes his own daughter was against him. It's sad, really. The trauma of our relationship broke something in him." I felt sick. "Why would he think that?" Mum shrugged, returning to her phone. "Guilty conscience, probably. When people do terrible things, they need someone to blame. Apparently, he's chosen to blame both of us." I tried calling my father that night. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again the next day and the day after that. Finally, Jennifer answered his phone. "Sarah," she said, and I could hear the discomfort in her voice. "Your father, he's asked me to tell you that he needs some space right now. He's going through a lot and—" "Let me talk to him," I demanded. "Please, I just need to explain. I'm sorry, he's not ready. Maybe in a few weeks when things have settled down." But weeks became months. My father cancelled our Wednesday dinners, then our weekend visits. At first, I thought it was temporary, that he'd come around once he realised Mum had lied to him. But as time went on, I began to understand something terrible. He really believed it. My mother had convinced him that I'd been complicit in his abuse. And maybe, I realised, that was her greatest skill. Not just hurting people, but making them believe they deserved it. Making them question their own memories, their own reality. I was 15 when she started with my boyfriends. His name was Tyler Bennett, and he was my first real crush. We'd been friends since middle school, the kind of friendship where we could talk about anything, where silences weren't awkward. Freshman year of high school, something shifted. Suddenly, I was noticing the way his hair fell across his forehead, how his smile made something flutter in my chest. When he asked me to the homecoming dance, I thought I might actually float away with happiness. I made the mistake of being excited at home. Big mistake. A date? Mum looked up from her magazine, one perfectly shaped eyebrow raised. "That's wonderful, honey. Who's the lucky boy?" Tyler Bennett. He's in my English class. We've been friends forever, and Tyler Bennett. She said it slowly, like she was tasting the name. Is that Margaret Bennett's son, the one who runs the community theatre? Yeah, that's his mom. Mom returned to her magazine, but I could see a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Well, you'll have to bring him by before the dance. I want to meet any boy who's taking my daughter out. I should have seen it coming, but I was 15 and stupid and so excited about my first real date. Tyler came over the Thursday before homecoming. He brought flowers, daisies, my favourite, and was dressed in khakis and a button-down shirt. He was nervous, which I found adorable. Mum opened the door before he could even knock. I'd seen my mother dress up before, of course, but that day she'd really gone all out. She was wearing yoga pants, the expensive kind that looked painted on, and a tank top that was just barely appropriate. Her hair was down in loose waves, and her makeup was perfect but natural-looking, the kind that takes an hour to achieve but looks like you just rolled out of bed looking gorgeous. "You must be Tyler," she said, her voice warm and welcoming. "I'm Tori. Please come in." Tyler stepped inside, and I saw him blink, momentarily confused. Later, he'd tell me he'd been expecting someone who looked more like his own mother. Comfortable, slightly rumpled, radiating mom energy. Instead, he'd walked into a magazine spread. "These are for Sarah," he said, holding out the daisies. His voice cracked slightly. 15-year-old boys and their changing voices. How sweet! Mum took the flowers, letting her fingers brush against his. "Sarah, look what Tyler brought you. You're a lucky girl." She turned to Tyler. "And you're a lucky boy. Sarah's very special, but I'm sure you know that." The way she said it made it sound like something else entirely. "Would you like something to drink?" Mum asked Tyler, already heading toward the kitchen. "I just made fresh lemonade." "Oh, that's okay, Mrs. Mitchell. We should probably—" "Call me Tori," she insisted. "Mrs. Mitchell makes me feel ancient." She laughed, a light, musical sound. "I had Sarah young, so we're practically the same generation." I saw Tyler's confusion. My mother was 43. We were definitely not the same generation. But that was the first example of what would become her signature move, repositioning herself as more of a peer than a parent. Making boys Tyler's age forget that she was old enough to be their mother. We ended up staying for lemonade, Mum insisted. She pulled up a stool at the kitchen counter, positioned herself between Tyler and the door, and started asking him questions. Normal questions at first, what classes he was taking, what his plans for college were, but gradually they became more personal. "Do you have a girlfriend?" she asked, even though I was sitting right there. "Well, I mean, Sarah and I are going to homecoming together." "But are you officially dating, or is this more of a seeing where it goes situation?" She leaned forward, and I saw Tyler's eyes involuntarily drop to her cleavage before he jerked them back up, his face reddening. "Mom," I said sharply, "we need to go. My study group starts in 20 minutes. "Oh, right, your study group." She said it like she didn't believe me, which was ridiculous because there really was a study group. "Well, it was lovely to meet you, Tyler. I hope we'll see more of you around here." Tyler practically bolted for the door. I grabbed my backpack and followed him, calling out a quick goodbye to Mom. In Tyler's car, a beat-up Honda Civic his parents had bought him for his 16th birthday, he sat for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, not starting the engine. "Your mom is intense," he finally said. "Yeah, she can be a lot," I agreed. "Sorry about that." "No, it's fine. She's just, I don't know, not what I expected." He started the car, and we drove to the library where our study group met. The incident faded from my mind. Tyler picked me up for homecoming. We had a great time, and I thought that was that. I was so wrong. A week after homecoming, Tyler started acting weird. He'd avoid making eye contact in the hallway at school, would suddenly remember he had somewhere to be when I approached him at lunch. I thought maybe I'd done something wrong at the dance. Stepped on his feet too many times, laughed too loud at his jokes, something. Then my best friend Rachel Kim pulled me aside after English class. "Sarah," she said, her voice low and urgent. "I need to tell you something, but you can't freak out, okay?" What is it?" "Yesterday, after school, I drove past your house, and Tyler's car was in your driveway, but I'd just seen you at the library, so I knew you weren't home." My stomach dropped. Maybe he was dropping something off for me. Rachel bit her lip. For 45 minutes. I didn't want to believe it. Couldn't believe it. But that night, when Mum was in the shower, I checked her phone. I knew her passcode. She'd never bothered to change it after the divorce. The messages were there, dozens of them, starting the day after Tyler had first come over. "It was so nice to meet you today. Sarah's lucky to have such a gentleman in her life." That one seemed innocent enough, but they escalated quickly. "Do you work out? You seem very athletic. I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable earlier. Sometimes I forget I'm not as young as I feel. Sarah's at the library until 8. If you wanted to stop by and talk about homecoming plans." And Tyler's responses, God, his responses. At first he'd been polite but distant, but gradually his messages changed too. "You don't seem old at all. My mum's your age and she looks nothing like you. I could stop by for a little while, if you want to talk about Sarah, I mean. Thank you for listening to me yesterday. I can't talk to Sarah about this stuff. You understand me in a way she doesn't." I felt like I couldn't breathe. I kept scrolling, finding more and more messages, getting progressively more inappropriate. And then, finally, photos. Not explicit, my mother was too smart for that, but suggestive. Her in a bikini by the pool, her accidentally showing too much when she bent over, her asking Tyler's opinion on a new dress. The final message was from 3 days ago. "That was amazing. You're so different from boys my age, more mature. Can we do this again?" I confronted Tyler the next day at school. He tried to deny it at first, then got defensive. "You don't understand," he said. "She gets me. She listens. And Sarah, I'm sorry, but you're kind of immature sometimes. Your mum, she's experienced. She knows things." "She's 43, I said flatly. "You're 15. This isn't romance, Tyler. It's statutory rape." His face went pale. "Don't call it that. It wasn't like that. She didn't force me to do anything. I wanted—" "You're 15, I repeated. "Legally, you can't consent. She's an adult. She's my mother. And she groomed you." I reported it. Of course I did. I went straight to the school counsellor, Mrs. Patterson, a kind woman in her 50s who'd always seemed genuinely interested in students' well-being. She listened to my story, taking notes, her expression growing more concerned as I talked. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and sighed. "Sarah, I want you to know I believe you, and what you're describing is very serious. We need to report this to the authorities." Relief flooded through me. Finally, someone was going to help. But the relief was short-lived. The police in our small town consisted of 4 officers, all men, all over 50. The detective who interviewed me, Detective Morrison, listened to my statement with increasingly visible skepticism. "And you're sure this boy didn't just make up these stories to impress his friends?" he asked. "I saw the text messages on my mother's phone. Did you take screenshots?" "No, I hadn't thought to. I'd been too shocked, too hurt. And this boy, Tyler Bennett, where is he now?" "At home, I guess. You can ask him yourself. They did interview Tyler and his parents and my mother. Tyler, under pressure from his parents, and possibly scared of getting in trouble himself, changed his story. Said I was jealous, that he'd been spending time with my mum because he felt sorry for her. Lonely divorcee and all that. That I was misinterpreting their friendship because I was insecure about our relationship. His parents, desperate to protect their son from scandal, backed up his version of events. And my mother was a revelation. She showed up to the police station dressed conservatively, a modest dress, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She cried actual tears, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "My daughter has been struggling since the divorce," she told Detective Morrison. "She's angry at me, angry at her father. I think she's created this fantasy as a way of acting out. Tyler is a sweet boy who's been kind to us both. Sarah's misinterpreted his kindness." "Mrs. Mitchell," Detective Morrison said, his voice gentle, Your daughter showed evidence of text messages. Text can be taken out of context, Mum interrupted. Tyler and I did exchange messages about Sarah's schoolwork, about homecoming plans. I was trying to be a good mother, making sure my daughter's date was trustworthy. Apparently, that was a mistake. The detective interviewed me again, this time with my mother present. Having her in the room changed everything. Every answer I gave, she'd shake her head sadly, like I was breaking her heart. In the end, Detective Morrison told me there wasn't enough evidence to pursue charges. Even if something did happen, he said, avoiding my eyes, the boy would have to be the one to report it. And given his statement, after we left the station, Mum didn't speak to me until we were in the car. Then she turned to me, all traces of tears gone, and smiled. "Nice try, sweetie," she said, "but you're going to have to do better than that." I spent the rest of freshman year keeping my head down, trying not to think about Tyler or the way the story had spread through school. Some people believed me, most didn't. Tyler was popular, a star on the junior varsity baseball team. I was just the weird girl with the divorced parents. Sophomore year, I promised myself things would be different. I wouldn't date, wouldn't bring anyone home, wouldn't give my mother any ammunition. But then I met Derek. Derek Chang transferred to our school at the start of sophomore year. His family had moved from Seattle. His dad got a job at the local tech company that was trying, and failing, to turn our small town into the next Silicon Valley. He was different from the other boys at school, quieter, more serious. He wore band t-shirts for groups I'd never heard of and read actual books during lunch instead of staring at his phone. We ended up in the same AP English class, got partnered for a project on The Great Gatsby, and discovered we had the same dark sense of humor about the ridiculousness of our small-town high school. I didn't tell my mother about him, not for 3 months, not until Derek and I were officially dating, not until I was sure this was real, and not just some crush that would burn itself out. Looking back, those 3 months were probably the happiest of my entire teenage years. Derek would pick me up for school, claiming he liked the company on the drive. We'd eat lunch together in his car, talking about books and music and our plans to get the hell out of Oregon the second we graduated. He kissed me for the first time in late October, and it was sweet and nervous and perfect. I kept our relationship off social media, told Derek my mum was really strict about posting personal stuff online. In reality, I was terrified that if she found out about him, she'd destroy this thing that was making me happy. But in a small town, secrets are impossible to keep forever. I should have known something was wrong when I got home from school one day in early December and found Mum cooking dinner. Not reheating takeout or making something from a box, actually cooking. The kitchen smelled like garlic and herbs, and she was humming as she stirred something on the stove. "Hey, honey," she said brightly when I walked in. "How was school?" "Fine." I dropped my backpack by the door, wary. "What's the occasion?" "Do I need an occasion to make dinner for my daughter?" She turned to look at me, smiling. "I was thinking we should have a talk, woman to woman, about growing up, relationships, all that stuff. Plus, I heard a rumor that you might be seeing someone. Derek Chang. Margaret Bennett mentioned it at the coffee shop." Of course, Margaret Bennett, Tyler's mother, still held a grudge, and my mother had her network of information sources throughout town. "We're just friends," I lied. Mum turned back to the stove. "Well, if he's more than a friend, you know you can tell me, right? I was young once, I understand." I didn't respond, just grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl and headed upstairs. But the damage was done. She knew. The next day, Derek and I were sitting in his car after school talking about colleges. He wanted to study computer science at MIT or Stanford. I was looking at schools on the East Coast, Columbia, NYU, anywhere far from home. "We could make it work," Derek was saying. "Long distance isn't ideal, but with video calls and holiday visits." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned. "Who is it?" I asked. "I don't know. Unknown number." He opened the text, and I watched his expression change from confused to uncomfortable. He turned the phone so I could see. It was a photo of my mother. She was wearing a red dress, one I'd never seen before, and the photo was taken from an angle that emphasized her figure. The message below it read, "Hi Derek, this is Sarah's mom. She mentioned you're into photography. What do you think of this shot? Trying to decide if I should update my profile pics." My stomach turned. "Don't respond," I said immediately. "Sarah, it's just, don't, trust me. Just delete it and block the number." He looked at me, really looked at me, and something in my expression must have convinced him. He deleted the message and blocked the number. "What's going on with your mom?" he asked quietly. I'd never told him about Tyler, never told him about my mother's pattern, but sitting there in his car, with winter rain pattering against the windshield, I finally explained everything. To his credit, Derek didn't run. He listened to the whole story, and when I finished, he reached over and took my hand. "That's messed up," he said. "Like, really messed up. But Sarah, I'm not some freshman who doesn't know what grooming looks like. My older sister went through something similar with one of her friends' mums. I'm not falling for it." I wanted to believe him, and for a few weeks it seemed like he was right. More messages came. My mother was relentless, but Derek ignored them all, blocked number after number. Then Mom escalated. It started small. She'd show up at the coffee shop Derek worked at on weekends, ordering complicated drinks and engaging him in long conversations. She joined the community gym where Derek did his morning workouts. She volunteered to chaperone the winter dance, where she spent the entire evening finding excuses to talk to him. Derek complained about it to me, but in a way that made it clear he still saw it as annoying rather than threatening. "Your mum really doesn't take a hint," he'd say, laughing uncomfortably, but I could see her wearing him down. She was patient, strategic. She started befriending his parents at school functions. His mother, Kim, was charmed by her. His father, Andrew, seemed wary, but didn't say anything. The night of the winter dance, I made the mistake of leaving Derek alone in the gym while I went to the bathroom. When I came back, my mother had cornered him by the refreshment table. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I could see his body language. He was uncomfortable, leaning away from her, but also not walking away. She'd placed her hand on his arm, was looking up at him with that expression I'd seen 100 times. Vulnerable, admiring, like he was the most interesting person in the world. I walked up, cutting between them. "Derek, can we talk? Outside?" "Oh, sweetie," Mum said, pulling back her hand. Derek and I were just discussing the music playlist. I was telling him how mature his taste is compared to most boys his age. "Cool, Derek, can we go?" We left, and I thought that was the end of it. But that night, lying in bed, I couldn't shake the image of my mother's hand on Derek's arm. The next Monday, Derek seemed distant. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but by Wednesday, it was obvious. He stopped eating lunch with me, claiming he needed to work on college applications. He started dropping me off before school started, saying he had to help his dad with something. On Thursday, I decided to skip sixth period and drove to his house. His car was there, so I knew he was home. I knocked on the door, and his mother answered. "Oh, Sarah," she said, smiling. "Derek's in his room. Go on up." I climbed the stairs, my heart pounding, and knocked on his door. "Derek, it's me." Silence. Then, finally, "Come in." He was sitting at his desk, staring at his laptop screen, but not really looking at it. "What's going on?" I asked, closing the door behind me. "You've been avoiding me all week." "I haven't been—" He stopped, sighed. "Okay, yeah, I have. I'm sorry." "Is it something I did?" "No, God, no, it's—" He turned to face me, and I could see the conflict written all over his face. "Your mom sent me another message, a video this time." My blood ran cold. "What kind of video?" "Nothing explicit. But it was her talking to the camera, saying she was worried about you, that you'd been having a hard time lately, and she thought maybe you and I should take a break, let you work on yourself. She said it was because she cared about both of us." Derek. And the thing is, Sarah, some of what she said made sense. You do seem stressed lately, and your mum seems really concerned. She sent me another message after that, saying if I needed to talk about anything, about you, about us, she was there. I felt like I was watching a car crash in slow motion. She's manipulating you. Is she, though? Or are you just paranoid because of what happened with Tyler? The words hit me like a physical blow. You think I'm making this up? I didn't say that, He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Your mum has been nothing but nice to me. And yeah, maybe she's a little inappropriate sometimes, but I can handle it. You're acting like she's this villain, but from where I'm standing, she just seems like a lonely woman trying to connect with her daughter's boyfriend. She's not lonely, she's predatory. Derek stood up, his jaw set. I'm not Tyler. I'm not some 15-year-old kid who doesn't know better. I can handle your mum being friendly. What I can't handle is you being so paranoid that you're sabotaging our relationship. We fought for another 20 minutes before I left, tears streaming down my face. Derek didn't try to stop me. The next week was torture. Derek and I weren't officially broken up, but we weren't exactly together either. We existed in some awful limbo where we barely spoke at school and didn't text at all outside of it. And then, one night in late January, my mother didn't come home. I wasn't worried at first. She often went out with friends, sometimes staying overnight at her book club friend Linda's house. But when she wasn't back by morning and wasn't answering her phone, I started to feel uneasy. I was getting ready for school when I got a text from Rachel. Did you know your mum was at Derek's house last night? My hands started shaking. What? My brother saw her car there when he drove past at like 2 a.m. He only noticed because he recognized the license plate. I called Derek. He didn't answer. I called again and again. Finally, on the 5th try, he picked up. Sarah, I can't. Where's my mother? Silence. Derek, where is my mother? She left an hour ago. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for... I hung up, drove to Derek's house. His mother answered the door, and I could tell from her expression that she knew something had happened. Is Derek here? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Sarah, maybe now isn't a good time. Is Derek here? She stepped aside, and I walked up to Derek's room. The door was closed. I opened it without knocking. He was sitting on his bed, head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red. How long? I asked. Sarah, how long has this been going on? 2 weeks, since the night we fought. She reached out, said she wanted to explain things from her perspective. We met for coffee, just to talk, but then... He trailed off. But then what, Derek? Use your words. She understood me in a way you didn't. She didn't judge me, didn't make me feel like I was crazy for being confused, and one thing led to another, and... She's 43, Derek. You're 16. I know it's wrong, but Sarah, He looked up at me, and I saw something in his eyes that made me want to scream. I think I have feelings for her. I laughed. Actually laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that didn't sound like it came from me at all. You have feelings for her. Jesus Christ. She makes me feel mature, important. You treat me like a kid, but she's a predator, I interrupted. She groomed you. She saw that we fought, and she used it as an opening. This isn't love, Derek. This isn't even lust. This is a 43-year-old woman who gets off on stealing teenage boys from her daughter. It's not like that. Did she tell you about Tyler, about the others? Derek's expression shifted. What others? There's always others. You're not special, Derek. You're just the latest. And when she gets bored of you, or when I find someone new to date, she'll drop you so fast you won't even remember your name. I left before he could respond. Drove home, walked into the house, and found my mother in the kitchen making breakfast. She looked up when I entered, that same practiced smile on her face. Morning, honey. Want some eggs? I walked up to her, looked her right in the eye, and said, I'm going to destroy you. She blinked, the smile faltering for just a second before returning. What are you talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about. And one day, when you least expect it, I'm going to make sure everyone sees you for what you really are. She studied me for a moment, then turned back to the stove. You're upset about Derek. I understand. But, sweetie, he came to me. I didn't pursue him. That's a lie. Is it? She cracked an egg into the pan. Or are you just angry that once again a boy chose me over you? That's when I knew. This wasn't about attraction or youth or loneliness. This was about control, about winning, about proving to herself and to me that she could take anything I cared about. I reported her again. This time to a different detective, a woman named Janet Foster, who'd recently transferred from Portland. I brought evidence, screenshots from Derek's phone that Rachel had convinced him to send me, showing the progression of my mother's messages, the video she'd sent him, witness statements from classmates who'd seen her at the coffee shop, at the gym, at school functions. Detective Foster listened, took notes, promised to investigate. She interviewed Derek, who by then had realized what had actually happened and was willing to talk. She interviewed my mother, who played the victim role perfectly. But here's the thing about small-town police departments. They protect their own. And my mother had spent 2 years building relationships, playing the abandoned woman trying to rebuild her life. She had friends at the coffee shop, at the grocery store, at the gym. People who saw her as charming Tori Mitchell, not as a sexual predator. The investigation went nowhere. Derek and I broke up officially. His parents pulled him out of our school and enrolled him in a private academy 20 miles away. Last I heard, he'd gotten into Stanford but deferred for a year to work on his mental health. My mother never faced any consequences, and I made a decision that night. I would wait. I would bide my time. I would make it to 18, to 19, to 20. And when the moment was right, when I had the power and the resources and the plan, I would make sure my mother understood exactly what she'd taken from me. Junior and senior year passed in a blur of strategic avoidance. I told my mother I wasn't interested in dating, that I was focusing on my studies, on college applications, on building the life I wanted far away from our small town. She seemed satisfied with this arrangement, or at least she didn't push it. What I didn't tell her was that I was dating someone. His name was Alex Rodriguez, and he went to the private school 2 towns over. We'd met at a regional debate competition, bonded over our shared hatred of the ridiculous topics we were forced to argue about, and started a relationship that existed entirely outside of my mother's awareness. Alex's school was 45 minutes away, which made spontaneous visits impossible. We communicated through burner phones, yes, like in spy movies, and met at locations Mum would never think to check. A bookstore in Beaverton, a hiking trail near the coast, the library at Portland State University, where no one from our town ever ventured. For 2 years, Alex and I maintained this secret relationship. It was exhausting and paranoid, and sometimes I wondered if it was worth it. But Alex was patient. He understood why we had to be careful, and he never pushed me to introduce him to my family. "When you're ready," he'd say, "and if you're never ready, that's okay too." I got accepted to Columbia University with a full scholarship. Financial aid was generous once they understood that my father had cut off contact, and my mother's income was limited to alimony payments and part-time work at a boutique. I would be leaving Oregon in August, 3,000 miles between me and Victoria Mitchell. But leaving wasn't enough. It never had been. I'd spent the past 3 years researching, planning, building a case. I knew now that the legal system wasn't going to help me, not in our town, not with my mother's connections and charm. But I'd learned something important. My mother had one vulnerability that she'd never bothered to hide. Her therapist. Dr. Gerald Peterson had been treating my mother since the divorce. He was 57, divorced twice himself, and ran a small private practice from an office above the yoga studio on Main Street. My mother went to see him twice a week without fail, and she talked about him constantly at home. Dr. Peterson says I need to forgive myself for the trauma of my marriage. Dr. Peterson believes that sometimes women need to reclaim their sexuality after emotional abuse. Dr. Peterson thinks you're holding on to resentment that's damaging our relationship. I'd met Dr. Peterson a handful of times, at the house when Mum invited him over for what she called family cleansing sessions, usually involving sage and crystal, and a lot of talk about releasing negative energy. He gave me the creeps in a way I couldn't quite articulate, The way his eyes would linger too long, the way he'd stand just slightly too close. My mother, of course, was completely blind to it, or maybe she just didn't care. I turned 19 the summer before my sophomore year at Columbia. I came home for exactly 2 weeks, long enough to satisfy the terms of a small scholarship that required me to maintain ties with my home community, and not long enough to risk my sanity. Mum threw me a welcome home party. She invited half the town, played the role of proud mother, showed everyone pictures of me at Columbia. Dr. Peterson was there, of course, sipping wine and nodding sagely as Mum described all the ways she'd supported my success. "Victoria's dedication to Sarah's well-being has been remarkable," he said to a group of guests. "Not every parent can maintain such a close relationship with a child who's 3,000 miles away. We didn't have a close relationship. We barely spoke. But I smiled and nodded and played the good daughter because I needed them both to believe I'd moved on." That night, after the guests left and Mum had gone to bed, I sat in my childhood room and pulled out a burner phone. I'd been planning this for 3 years. Now it was finally time. The next morning, I walked into Dr. Peterson's office. Not as Sarah Mitchell, daughter of his longtime client. As Emma Thompson, a troubled 19-year-old referred by a friend. I'd paid cash at the reception desk under that false name, and the middle-aged receptionist barely glanced at me. Dr. Peterson's office smelled like lavender and leather. The walls were covered with diplomas and certifications, and there was a box of tissues on every surface. He gestured for me to sit in the patient chair, a comfortable armchair that faced his desk but was slightly lower, a subtle power dynamic. "So, Emma," he said, pulling out a notepad, "what brings you here today?" I let my voice shake slightly. "It's my mother. She's destroying my life." And then I told him a story. Not my real story, not yet. I told him about a fictional mother who was a narcissist, who couldn't stand to see her daughter happy, who used emotional manipulation and sabotage to maintain control. I used all the phrases I'd heard my mother use over the years, all the therapy speak Dr. Peterson had taught her. "Emotional terrorism," I said, watching him write it down. "Weaponized vulnerability," I added, and his pen moved faster. "Toxic enmeshment," I finished, and I saw recognition flash in his eyes. He was eating it up. This was his language, his framework. I was speaking his professional dialect, and he was responding exactly as I'd hoped. My phone, my real phone, positioned carefully in my jacket pocket, buzzed. I pulled it out to check, making sure Dr. Peterson could see the screen. My wallpaper was a photo from Mum's last birthday party, a photo of the two of us, smiling, her arm around me. "Is that your mother?" Dr. Peterson asked, his voice suddenly strange. I quickly locked the screen, letting embarrassment flood my face. "Yes, we have such a complicated relationship. She insists on taking these photos, creating this perfect family image, but behind closed doors." I let the sentence trail off. He stared at the phone for a long moment. I could see the wheels turning in his mind. Victoria Mitchell, his longtime client, his success story. The woman he'd been treating for 4 years now. "Emma," he said slowly, "I need to ask you something. Your last name, is it Mitchell?" I bit my lip, looking down. I didn't want to lie, but I was afraid if I used my real name, you wouldn't see me, because you know her. You're her therapist. "You're Sarah," he said, and it wasn't a question. I needed someone to understand, I said, tears forming, real tears this time, because some part of me meant it. "And you're the only person she listens to. You're the only person who might be able to help me." The session should have ended there. Ethically, Dr. Peterson should have told me he couldn't treat me, that treating both mother and daughter was a conflict of interest. But he didn't. Instead, he leaned forward, and I saw something shift in his expression. "Sarah," he said softly, "I'm going to help you." Over the next 2 weeks, I had 3 more sessions with Dr. Peterson. I told him more about my mother, carefully edited versions of the truth, designed to make him see her in a new light. I talked about Tyler and Derek, about the pattern of behavior that no one else seemed to recognize. But I also did something else, something I'd learned from watching my mother all these years. I flirted, not obviously, not in a way that could be called out, just small things. Letting my hand brush against his when I took the tissues he offered, maintaining eye contact a beat too long, wearing clothes that were appropriate but flattering, asking him personal questions about his own life, his divorces, his loneliness. Everything my mother had done to Tyler and Derek, I did to Dr. Peterson, and he responded. By the third session, his hand was lingering on my shoulder when he walked me to the door. He was suggesting we meet more frequently. Intensive therapy for this level of trauma. He was texting me between sessions to check in. On the fourth session, he kissed me. We were standing by the door, the session having gone 15 minutes over time. I'd been crying, real tears mixed with fake ones, talking about how alone I felt, how my mother had destroyed my ability to trust people. "You're so brave," Dr. Peterson said, his hand on my shoulder, so incredibly brave. "I don't feel brave," I whispered. "I feel broken." "You're not broken. You're healing." His hand moved from my shoulder to my cheek. "And Sarah, I want you to know that I see you, really see you." He kissed me then, and I let him. More than let him, I kissed back. My phone, in my pocket, was recording everything. The hidden camera in my bag was capturing video. When we broke apart, I looked up at him with wide eyes. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have—" "No," he said quickly. "Don't apologize. This is a natural response to therapy. Sometimes, in the process of healing, we feel strong connections to people who help us. But you're my therapist, and my mother's therapist." "I know, and we should probably talk about boundaries, but Sarah—" He touched my face again. "You're not a child. You're a grown woman who's been through trauma, and sometimes healing takes unexpected forms." I left his office that day with 2 weeks' worth of recordings, audio, video, text messages, evidence of a therapist engaging in a sexual relationship with a client, one who was also the daughter of another client. But I didn't go to the police, not yet. I had one more piece to put in place. I went back to New York, back to Columbia, and I waited. Dr. Peterson texted me almost every day. At first, they were professional messages, asking how I was doing, whether I was sleeping okay, if I'd thought more about what we'd discussed in therapy. But gradually, they became more personal, more inappropriate. "I can't stop thinking about our last session. You're so different from other clients, more mature. Your mother talks about you all the time, but she doesn't really see who you've become. That last one was particularly rich. My mother had no idea that her therapist was texting her daughter. She was still going to her twice-weekly sessions, still paying Dr. Peterson $200 an hour to validate her behavior and give her permission to continue her pattern of destruction. In October, Mum started calling me more frequently. At first, I thought something was wrong. Mum usually preferred texts, which allowed her to craft her image more carefully. But these calls were different. She sounded almost paranoid. "Has anyone been asking you questions about me?" she asked during one call. "What? No. Why would anyone ask me questions about you?" "I don't know. I have this feeling, like something's happening that I don't know about. Mom, you're being weird. Am I? Or am I finally seeing things clearly?" She paused. "How often are you talking to Dr. Peterson?" My heart started racing, but I kept my voice calm. "I'm not talking to Dr. Peterson. Why would I talk to your therapist?" "I don't know. He's been acting strange lately, asking me questions about you, about your childhood, about my relationship with men you've dated. Maybe he's just trying to help you understand why our relationship is so messed up. Or maybe someone's been talking to him, poisoning him against me." "Jesus, Mom, you sound paranoid. Maybe you should talk to Dr. Peterson about that." She hung up without saying goodbye. 2 weeks later, Dr. Peterson called me. His voice was strained. "Sarah, we need to talk. Can you come back to Oregon, just for a weekend?" "Why? What's wrong?" "Your mother. She's becoming suspicious. She asked me directly if I'd been seeing you. I didn't know what to say." "What did you tell her?" I said no, but Sarah, I don't think she believed me. "And if she starts digging, then we need to be more careful," I said. Or Or what? Or we stop hiding it. Dr. Peterson, Gerald, you've been divorced twice. Your marriages ended because you were with women who didn't understand you, but we understand each other, don't we? There was a long pause. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that I'm 19 years old. I'm an adult. What we have isn't illegal or even unethical anymore. I'm not your client, not officially. I paid cash under a fake name. There's no paperwork trail. Yes, it would be awkward with my mother, but maybe it's time she learned that she's not the only one who can connect with people. I could practically hear the wheels turning in his head, the rationalization he was doing, convincing himself that this was okay, that I was different, that this was real connection, and not just the same pattern my mother had been acting out for years. "Come back for Thanksgiving," he said finally. "We'll figure this out then." "Okay," I agreed. "I'll come home for Thanksgiving." I didn't go home for Thanksgiving. Instead, I went to Detective Janet Foster's office in Portland, the same detective who'd tried to investigate my mother after the Derek incident. "Sarah," she said, surprised to see me. "What are you doing here? I thought you were at Columbia." "I am, but I have something for you, something that might finally make you believe me about my mother." I laid it all out for her. The recordings of Dr. Peterson kissing me, the text messages he'd sent over the past months, the way he'd been treating my mother while simultaneously engaging in an inappropriate relationship with me. But I also gave her something else, evidence that this wasn't the first time. I'd spent the past 2 years reaching out to Dr. Peterson's former clients, women who'd been listed in a medical board complaint from 5 years earlier. The complaint had been dismissed due to lack of evidence, but the women had been willing to talk to me, to tell me about how Dr. Peterson had a pattern of forming inappropriate relationships with vulnerable clients. My mother wasn't his first victim. She was just his most successful one, the one who'd been so convinced by his therapy that she'd started mimicking his predatory behavior with her own targets. Detective Foster listened to everything, watched the videos, read the text messages, contacted the former clients I'd found, and then she told me something that changed everything. "Sarah, what you've given me is enough to start an investigation into Dr. Peterson. His licensing board will almost certainly pull his credentials, but your mother—" "What about my mother?" "She's a victim here of Dr. Peterson's manipulation. If we pursue this, she's not going to face charges. She's going to be seen as another one of his targets." "No," I said firmly. "You don't understand. She's not a victim. Or at least she stopped being just a victim a long time ago. She's been preying on teenage boys for years. Tyler Bennett, Derek Chang, both of whom recanted their statements or refused to testify," Detective Foster interrupted gently. "Sarah, I believe you. But belief isn't the same as proof. What you've given me proves that Dr. Peterson crossed professional boundaries. It doesn't prove your mother committed any crimes." I felt sick. "So she gets away with it, again? Unless we can find evidence that she coerced or manipulated these boys, physical evidence, recordings, something concrete, we can't charge her with anything. Small-town police departments, small-town prosecutors, they're not going to pursue a case against a woman who's seen as a victim herself. I went home for Thanksgiving after all, but not to see Dr. Peterson, to see my mother." She opened the door, and I could see immediately that she knew something was wrong. Her makeup was perfect, her hair styled, but there was something brittle in her expression. "Sarah," she said, "I wasn't expecting you." "Can I come in?" She stepped aside, and I walked into the house I'd grown up in. Everything was the same furniture, the same photos on the walls, the same faint smell of her perfume mixed with whatever expensive candle she was burning this week. "Where's Dr. Peterson?" I asked, sitting on the couch. "I thought you two were planning a Thanksgiving dinner." Her eyes narrowed. "How did you know about that?" "He told me when I was sleeping with him." The color drained from her face. "What did you just say?" "You heard me. For the past 2 months, I've been having an affair with your therapist, the man you've been confiding in, the man you've been paying to validate your every action. He's been texting me, calling me, telling me how different I am from other clients, how mature, how understanding." She was shaking now, her hands clenched into fists. "You're lying. Am I? Or does this sound familiar?" I pulled out my phone and started reading his text messages aloud. Messages that sounded eerily similar to the ones my mother had sent to Tyler and Derek. You seduced him. You went to him deliberately." "Yes," I interrupted. "I did. I used every trick I learned from watching you. I flirted. I played vulnerable. I made him feel special. And you know what? It was easy. Ridiculously easy. Because predators like him, like you, are always looking for their next victim. You just have to know how to present yourself." "I am not a predator," she hissed. "Those boys, Tyler, Derek, they came to me. They were children," I said flatly. 15, 16 years old, and you groomed them. Just like Dr. Peterson groomed you, just like I groomed him." "Why?" Her voice broke. "Why would you do this?" "Because you destroyed every relationship I ever had. Because you took my father from me, my boyfriends, my sense of safety in my own home. Because no one would listen when I tried to tell them what you were doing. So I made them listen." "By sleeping with my therapist?" "I didn't sleep with him. I made him think I would. I recorded every inappropriate conversation, every text message, every boundary he crossed. And then I turned it all over to the police." She stared at me, and I watched as the reality of what I'd done sank in. "Dr. Peterson is being investigated by the medical board," I continued. "His license will be revoked. His career is over. And everyone in this town who thought you were just a lonely divorcee is going to know exactly what kind of therapy you were really getting. They're going to ask questions about why your therapist was so supportive of your behavior with teenage boys. They're going to start connecting dots they should have connected years ago." "This is revenge," she whispered. "You did this for revenge." "No," I said, standing up. "I did this for every boy you hurt, for every relationship you destroyed, for the girl I was before you turned me into someone who doesn't trust anyone." I walked to the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Mom, happy Thanksgiving." I left her standing there, and I didn't look back. The investigation into Dr. Gerald Peterson moved quickly. The medical board suspended his license within 2 weeks, and by January, criminal charges were filed. Not just for his relationship with me, though that was part of it, but for a pattern of misconduct with multiple clients spanning over a decade. The women I'd found, the ones from the previous complaint, were willing to testify now. Something about seeing another woman stand up gave them courage. Or maybe they'd just been waiting for someone to believe them. Dr. Peterson's trial made regional news. Small-town therapist accused of serially exploiting vulnerable clients. The details were salacious enough to draw attention, but not so scandalous that national media picked it up. My mother's name wasn't mentioned directly in most articles, but in a town of 8,000 people, anonymity is impossible. Everyone knew she'd been Dr. Peterson's client. Everyone knew I was her daughter. Everyone started putting together a story that was almost, but not quite, the truth. The narrative that emerged was this. Dr. Gerald Peterson had manipulated a traumatized divorcee, my mother, and later crossed boundaries with her adult daughter, me, in an attempt to create some kind of twisted family dynamic. Victoria Mitchell was portrayed as a victim, one of many, who'd been receiving therapy from a predator. It wasn't the full truth, but it was enough to destroy my mother's carefully constructed image. The whispers started immediately. Women who'd been her friends began to distance themselves. The mothers at PTA meetings suddenly remembered other places they needed to be. The boutique where she worked let her go, citing budget cuts. But the worst part, the part that truly broke her, was that people started asking questions. Margaret Bennett, Tyler's mother, was the first to speak up. She posted on Facebook a long detailed post about how her son had been taken advantage of by an older woman who'd been under the care of a predatory therapist. She didn't name my mother. She didn't have to. Within days, others came forward. Not with allegations, they were too smart for that, but with stories about uncomfortable encounters, about inappropriate comments, about feeling like something was off with Victoria Mitchell. I watched it all unfold from New York, 3,000 miles away. I should have felt victorious. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? For people to finally see my mother for what she really was. Instead, I felt hollow. Detective Foster called me in February, 6 weeks after Dr. Peterson's arrest. "Sarah, we need to talk about your testimony." "What about it?" "The defense is going to argue that you initiated contact with Dr. Peterson, that you deliberately seduced him as part of some revenge plot against your mother." "I did deliberately seek him out," I admitted. "But I was 19 years old, and he was my mother's therapist. He should have refused to see me. He should have maintained professional boundaries. The fact that he didn't, that he was willing to engage in an inappropriate relationship with the adult daughter of a current client, proves that he's exactly what we say he is." "I agree. But Sarah, they're going to make you look like the villain here. They're going to say you used your mother's trauma for your own ends." "My mother doesn't have trauma," I said tiredly. "Or if she does, she's been using it as an excuse to hurt people for years. But you're right, no jury in Oregon is going to see it that way." "So what do you want to do?" I thought about it, about the trial, the testimony, the circus that my life would become. About my mother, who would play the victim perfectly, who would cry on the stand and talk about how her mentally unstable daughter had destroyed her relationship with her therapist. "I want to make a deal," I said finally. The deal was this. I would testify about Dr. Peterson's inappropriate behavior, about the boundary violations, about the pattern that had been established. But I wouldn't mention the revenge aspect. I would present myself as a troubled young woman who'd sought therapy and been taken advantage of by her mother's therapist. It meant my mother would be seen as a victim. It meant the full truth about her behavior would never come out in court. But it also meant Dr. Peterson would go to jail, and sometimes you have to settle for partial justice. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Dr. Peterson's defense tried to paint me as a seductress, a manipulator, a young woman with boundary issues, learned from her troubled mother. My testimony was picked apart, questioned, challenged. But the other women, the ones who'd been his clients years ago, their testimony was damning. And when the jury heard from 5 different women, all describing the same pattern of behavior, the defense's narrative collapsed. Dr. Peterson was convicted on 6 counts of professional misconduct and sexual exploitation. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison. My mother attended every day of the trial. She sat in the back row, dressed conservatively, her face a mask of grief. Several times she tried to approach me in the hallway outside the courtroom. Each time I walked away. After the verdict, she cornered me in the parking garage. "Sarah, please, we need to talk." "We don't need to do anything. What you said in there about Dr. Peterson taking advantage of me, it's what the jury needed to hear." "But it wasn't the truth, or not all of it. She stopped, struggling with words. "I know what I did to you, to those boys. I know it was wrong." "Do you?" I asked. "Or are you just sorry you got caught?" "I'm sorry for all of it, for the years of hurt, for the relationships I destroyed, for turning into someone I don't even recognize anymore." I wanted to believe her. Some part of me, the part that was still the little girl who'd loved her mother before everything fell apart, desperately wanted to believe this was real. But I'd learned too much, seen too much, been manipulated too many times. "I don't forgive you," I said. "I don't know if I ever will. I understand." Tears, real tears for once, streamed down her face. "But Sarah, I need you to know something. Dr. Peterson didn't make me who I am. Your father didn't make me who I am. I made choices, bad choices, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make up for them." "Good," I said. "Start by leaving me alone." I walked away, got in my car, and drove back to the hotel where I was staying. I didn't cry. I'd cried enough over the years. Instead, I felt something else. Not quite relief, not quite victory. Just a sense of finality. It was over. Not perfectly, not completely, but over. I graduated from Columbia with honors in May. My father and Jennifer came to the ceremony, our first real conversation in years. It was awkward and stilted, but it was something. "I'm sorry," Dad said over dinner after the ceremony, "for believing your mother, for cutting you off, for not being there when you needed me." "She's very convincing," I said. "She convinced me sometimes too." "That's not an excuse. I was your father. I should have known better." "Yes," I agreed. "You should have. But Dad, I don't have the energy to hold on to anger at both of you, so I'm choosing to let this go. Not for you, for me." He nodded, understanding. Jennifer squeezed his hand, and I saw something pass between them, a shared relief that I was willing to try. I moved to Seattle after graduation, taking a job with a non-profit that worked with survivors of sexual abuse. It wasn't planned. I'd applied on a whim, thinking I wouldn't get it. But they called me for an interview, and when I told them my story, the edited version, the one that cast me as a victim rather than a schemer, they offered me the position on the spot. "We need people who understand," the director, a woman named Patricia, told me. "People who've been through it and came out the other side." The work was hard, heartbreaking. Every client I saw reminded me of myself at 15, at 16, at 17. Young people who'd been groomed by people they should have been able to trust. Young people who blamed themselves, who didn't know how to articulate what had happened to them. I threw myself into it, worked 60-hour weeks, took crisis calls at 2 a.m., attended court hearings to support clients. My colleagues worried I was burning out, but I couldn't stop. Every person I helped felt like a small redemption. 6 months after I started the job, I got a call from Detective Foster. "Sarah, I wanted to let you know, your mother's been arrested." My heart stopped. "For what?" "Statutory rape." An 18-year-old boy, the son of one of her co-workers. He recorded their conversations, took screenshots of her text messages. His parents came forward, and this time we had enough evidence to prosecute. I sat down, suddenly dizzy. Is she going to prison? If convicted, yes. The prosecutor is pushing for a 5-year sentence. And the boy, is he okay? Physically, yes. Emotionally, Detective Foster sighed. He's going through what you went through, blaming himself, feeling ashamed. His mother got him into therapy, with a different therapist this time, obviously. Can I talk to him? What? Can I talk to him? Not as a representative of my mother, but as someone who understands, who's been where he is. There was a long pause. I'll ask his parents, but Sarah, are you sure you're ready for that? No, I admitted, but I don't think I'll ever be ready, and he shouldn't have to wait for me to be ready. The boy's name was Jordan. His parents agreed to let me call him, though his mother listened in on the conversation. "Jordan," I said when he picked up. "My name is Sarah. I'm Victoria Mitchell's daughter." "I know who you are," he said. His voice was flat, emotionless. "She talked about you. What did she say?" "That you didn't understand her, that you were jealous, that you made up stories about her because you couldn't handle her being happy." I closed my eyes. Of course. Even while grooming another victim, she'd been preparing him to doubt me. "Jordan, I'm not going to try to convince you of anything. I'm just going to tell you what happened to me, and you can decide what you want to do with that information, okay?" "Okay." I told him everything. About Tyler and Derek and the others, about the pattern, the manipulation, the way my mother had systematically destroyed my relationships and then blamed me for being unable to maintain them. When I finished, there was silence on the other end of the line. "She told me I was special," Jordan finally said, "that I was different from other boys my age, more mature. I know. She said she could teach me things about how to treat women right, how to be a real man." "I know. It's not true, is it? I'm not special. I'm just another one. You are special, Jordan, just not in the way she made you believe. And what happened to you? It's not your fault. She's an adult. You're 18. There's a power dynamic there that made it impossible for you to really consent, even if you thought you wanted it." More silence, then. "Did you blame yourself?" "Every day for years," I admitted. "I still do sometimes, but I'm working on it." "Does it get better?" "Yes, not right away, not easily, but yes, it gets better. Jordan's testimony was crucial in my mother's trial. He was articulate, credible, and his evidence was irrefutable. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning a guilty verdict. My mother was sentenced to 7 years in prison. I didn't attend the sentencing. I couldn't. Instead, I stayed in Seattle, working with my clients, trying to be the person I'd needed when I was 15. 2 years passed. I dated occasionally, carefully, cautiously. I went to therapy myself, working through the complicated feelings about my mother, my father, the boys who'd been hurt, and my own role in the mess. And then, one day, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Sarah, it's Alex. Alex. My high school boyfriend, the one I'd kept secret from my mother for 2 years, the one I'd lost touch with when I moved to New York. Alex, how did you get my number? Rachel gave it to me. I hope that's okay. I'm in Seattle for work and I was hoping maybe we could get coffee? We met at a small cafe in Capitol Hill. Alex looked different, older obviously, but also more confident. He'd graduated from Berkeley, was working as a software engineer at Amazon. We talked for 3 hours, catching up on everything that had happened in the years since high school. Finally, as the cafe was closing, Alex said, I read about your mum, the trial. Sarah, I'm so sorry. If I'd known what she was doing to those other boys— You were one of those other boys, I interrupted. You just got lucky. I kept you away from her. Is that why we had to be so secretive? I always wondered. Yeah, I couldn't risk her finding out about you, couldn't risk losing something that made me happy. And now she's in prison, and I'm trying to figure out how to be a normal person who can have normal relationships. Alex reached across the table and took my hand. For what it's worth, I don't think either of us will ever be completely normal, but maybe we can be weird together. I laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in what felt like years. That's the worst pickup line I've ever heard. Yeah, I know. I'm a software engineer, not a poet. Want to grab dinner anyway? We started dating. Slowly, carefully. Alex was patient with my trust issues, my panic attacks, my need to know exactly where he was and who he was with. He met my friends from work, came to volunteer events with me, proved over and over that he was safe. A year later, he proposed, not with a grand gesture, but quietly, over breakfast in his apartment. Sarah, I love you. I've loved you since we were 17, and meeting in secret at that bookstore in Beaverton. I want to build a life with you, a real life, with no secrets and no fear. What do you say? I said yes. We got married at a small ceremony in the San Juan Islands. My father walked me down the aisle. Jennifer cried. Rachel was my maid of honor. Dr. Patricia from the non-profit came, along with several of my colleagues and clients I'd helped over the years. My mother did not receive an invitation. 3 weeks before the wedding, she'd sent me a letter from prison. My first instinct was to throw it away unread, but Alex convinced me to at least open it. The letter was 3 pages long, handwritten on prison stationery. In it, my mother apologized, really apologized, in detail, for specific things she'd done. She didn't make excuses or blame anyone else. She acknowledged the harm she'd caused, not just to me, but to Tyler, Derek, Jordan, and all the others. She wrote, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I need you to know that I understand now what I took from you. I understand that I destroyed your childhood, your sense of safety, your ability to trust. I understand that I chose my own brokenness over your well-being again and again. And I understand that you did what you had to do to protect yourself and to protect others from me. At the end of the letter, she wrote, I'm getting real therapy now. Not from someone like Dr. Peterson, but from a good therapist who actually cares about helping people. I'm working on understanding why I did what I did, why I couldn't see how much I was hurting you. It's painful work, but I owe it to you and to all the boys I hurt to do this work. I love you, Sarah. I always have. I just didn't know how to show it in a way that didn't destroy everything. I cried when I finished reading it. Not because I forgave her, I didn't, not completely, but because some part of me had been waiting my whole life to hear those words. I wrote back one time with a short note, "Mom, I'm getting married. You won't be there, and that's the right decision. But I wanted you to know that I'm building a life, a good life, the kind of life you could have had if you'd made different choices. I hope your therapy helps. I hope you learn to live with what you've done. I hope someday you find peace. But I've found mine, and it doesn't include you." I didn't send wedding photos, didn't call on holidays, didn't visit her in prison. But sometimes, late at night, I think about her, about the mother she could have been, the relationship we could have had, about how different everything might have been if she'd gotten real help after the divorce, if she'd dealt with her pain instead of inflicting it on others. I think about Dr. Peterson too, still in prison, probably still believing he was the victim of some grand conspiracy, about Tyler and Derek, who I hope found their own versions of peace, about Jordan, who's in college now and doing well according to Detective Foster. And I think about me, about the girl I was at 15, scared and confused and alone, about the woman I became at 19, angry and calculating and desperate for justice, about the person I am now at 26, still scarred but healing, still careful but hopeful. A year after our wedding, Alex and I bought a house in Ballard. Nothing fancy, a small craftsman with a garden where I grew tomatoes and herbs. We adopted a dog, a rescue named Murphy, who was afraid of everything but slowly learned to trust us. My work at the non-profit evolved. I started leading workshops at local high schools, teaching teenagers how to recognize grooming behavior and set boundaries with adults. At first, I worried that I'd be too close to the material, that I wouldn't be able to maintain professional distance. But Patricia was right when she'd hired me. The fact that I'd lived through it made me more effective, not less. Students responded to my honesty, asked questions they might not have asked someone without experience. One day, I got an email through the nonprofit's website. No name, just a message. "Hi, Sarah. You don't know me, but I was one of Dr. Peterson's clients before all of this came out. I've been in therapy for 2 years now, working through everything he did to me. My therapist suggested I might want to reach out to other survivors to hear how they've coped. If you're willing to talk, I'd really appreciate it. No pressure, though. I know you've been through enough." I responded, and we arranged to meet for coffee. Her name was Michelle, and she was 42 years old, just a year younger than my mother had been when all of this started. "Dr. Peterson was treating me for depression after my divorce," Michelle told me. "At first, he seemed helpful, supportive, but then he started crossing boundaries, asking personal questions about my sex life, suggesting that physical intimacy could be healing. And when I told him I was uncomfortable, he made me feel like I was the problem, like I was too damaged to recognize good therapy." "How long did it go on?" I asked. 3 years. I finally stopped seeing him when I started dating someone new, and my boyfriend pointed out that what Dr. Peterson was doing wasn't normal. But even then, I blamed myself. Thought I'd misinterpreted everything. It wasn't until his arrest that I realized I'd been groomed. "I'm sorry," I said. "That's awful." "Yeah." She stirred her coffee absently. "But Sarah, I wanted to tell you something. What you did, exposing him, testifying, forcing people to see the pattern, it gave me permission to stop blaming myself. And I know it cost you. I know people probably think you're vindictive or manipulative or whatever, but you saved people, future clients who won't have to go through what we went through." I didn't know what to say. I'd never thought of it that way, as saving people. I'd been so focused on revenge, on justice, on making sure my mother and Dr. Peterson faced consequences. "Thank you," I finally said. "I needed to hear that." Michelle and I stayed in touch. She introduced me to 2 other former clients of Dr. Peterson's, and we formed an informal support group. We met monthly, talking about our experiences, our healing processes, and the complicated feelings that came with being victims of the same predator. One evening, about 6 months after I'd met Michelle, my father called. "Sarah, I need to tell you something." My heart sank. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Well, not exactly. It's about your mother." "What about her?" She's being released early. Good behavior, participation in therapy programs, all of that. She'll be out in 3 months. I sat down, suddenly lightheaded. Where will she go? I don't know. She's not allowed to return to Oregon, part of her parole terms. But Sarah, I wanted you to know so you could prepare yourself, in case she tries to contact you. She didn't try to contact me, not directly, but 2 weeks after her release, I got a message on Facebook from a profile I didn't recognize. The account was new, with no friends and no other posts. The message was simple. Sarah, I know you don't want to hear from me, I understand, but I wanted you to know that I've moved to Arizona. I'm working at a women's shelter, doing administrative work. I'm still in therapy. I'm trying to do better. I'm not asking for forgiveness or reconciliation. I just wanted you to know that I heard what you said, that you deserved better, that all of those boys deserved better, and I'm trying to become someone who wouldn't hurt people the way I hurt them. That's all. Be well. I showed the message to Alex. What do you think? I think she's saying what you need to hear, he said carefully. Whether she means it or not, I can't say. But Sarah, you don't owe her a response. You don't owe her anything. He was right. I didn't respond to the message. But a few months later, when the nonprofit was looking to expand into Arizona, I suggested we reach out to the women's shelter where my mother worked. Not because I wanted to see her, but because the shelter needed the resources we could provide, and I wasn't going to let my personal issues stand in the way of helping other women. Patricia looked at me carefully when I made the suggestion. Are you sure about this? No, I admitted, but it's the right thing to do. The partnership was established through email and phone calls. I never spoke directly to my mother, and she never tried to insert herself into the process. But her supervisor at the shelter, a woman named Rosa, mentioned her in passing during one of our calls. Victoria has been incredible, Rosa said. She works harder than anyone else here, and she has this way of connecting with our clients. A lot of them have been through trauma, and she seems to understand what they're feeling in a way that's really helpful. I didn't know how to feel about that. Part of me was angry. How dare my mother use her experience to help other women when she'd spent years hurting people? But another part of me thought, maybe this is her penance. Maybe this is how she lives with what she's done. A year later, Alex and I found out I was pregnant. We hadn't been trying, but we weren't not trying either. When I saw those 2 pink lines on the test, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Joy, terror, and something I couldn't quite name. What if I'm like her? I asked Alex that night. What if there's something broken in me that gets passed down? You're nothing like her, Alex said firmly. Sarah, you've spent the past 5 years helping people, protecting people, doing the exact opposite of what she did. Whatever genetics you might share, you've made different choices, and you'll continue to make different choices. But what if I don't know how to be a mother? The only example I had was terrible, I know, but you're not alone in this. We'll figure it out together. And Sarah, you have so many good examples now. Patricia, Rosa, even Jennifer with your little sister. You know what good parenting looks like. Jennifer. I hadn't thought much about her in years, but Alex was right. My father and Jennifer had a daughter now, Emma, who was 5 years old. I'd met her a few times, watched Jennifer parent her with patience and kindness and boundaries, with all the things my mother had lacked. Our daughter was born in April. We named her Lily, after Alex's grandmother. She was perfect. Tiny fingers, dark hair, lungs that could wake the dead. When the nurse placed her in my arms, I looked down at her and made a promise. I will protect you. I will listen to you. I will never use you as a weapon or a tool or a way to make myself feel young again. You will know you are safe. Motherhood was harder than I'd imagined. The sleepless nights, the constant worry, the feeling that I was doing everything wrong. But it was also better. Watching Lily discover the world, seeing her smile, hearing her laugh, it healed something in me I hadn't realized was still broken. When Lily was 6 months old, I received a package in the mail. The return address was from Arizona, from the women's shelter. Inside was a letter and a small wooden box. The letter was from my mother. Sarah, I don't expect you to read this, but I needed to send it anyway. I heard through your father that you had a baby girl. Congratulations. I'm sure you're a wonderful mother, better than I ever was. I've enclosed something that belonged to my mother, your grandmother. She died before you were old enough to remember her, but she was everything I should have been. Kind, patient, selfless. Maybe it will mean something to Lily someday, or maybe you'll throw it away. Either way is fine. I just wanted you to have it. Be well, Sarah. Be happy. Be the mother I couldn't be. Inside the wooden box was a silver locket. I opened it and found 2 tiny photos. One of my grandmother as a young woman and one of me as a baby, held by my grandmother. I'd never seen this photo before. In it, my grandmother was looking down at me with such pure love that it made my chest ache. I showed the locket to Alex. What should I do with this? That's up to you, he said. But Sarah, if you want to keep it for Lily, that doesn't mean you're forgiving your mother. It just means you're honoring your grandmother. I put the locket away in my jewelry box, uncertain if I'd ever wear it or pass it on to Lily. But I kept the photo of me and my grandmother, put it in a frame on my dresser where I could see it every morning. When Lily was 2, Jordan, the boy whose testimony had helped convict my mother, reached out to me through the non-profit. He was 20 now, in his 3rd year at University of Washington, studying psychology. I want to work in this field, he told me over coffee, help people who've been through what I went through. And Sarah, I wanted to thank you for calling me back then, for believing me, for showing me that it was possible to move past it. How are you doing? I asked. Really doing? Better. Some days are harder than others. I still have trust issues, still second-guess people's intentions. But I'm in a good relationship now with someone who understands, and I'm learning to believe that not everyone has an ulterior motive. That's huge, I said. Jordan, I'm really proud of you. Thanks. And Sarah? Your mum? I heard she's working at a women's shelter now, that she's doing good work. That's what I hear. Do you think people can change? Really change? I thought about it. About the woman my mother had been versus the woman she claimed to be now, about the years of hurt versus this tentative redemption. I think people can change their behavior, I finally said. Whether they change who they fundamentally are, I don't know. But I know that choosing to do better every day, consistently, over years, that matters, even if the core person stays the same. Do you think you'll ever talk to her again? I don't know, I admitted. Maybe someday, but not because I've forgiven her or because I think we can have a relationship. Just to close the loop, I guess. To tell her face to face that I survived her, that I built a life she tried to destroy, that I'm happy in spite of her, not because of her. That's fair, Jordan said. Sometimes the best revenge is just living well. When Lily was 3, my mother sent another letter. This time, it included a newspaper clipping about an award the women's shelter had received for their work with domestic violence survivors. My mother was in the photo, older, greyer, wearing a simple outfit and no makeup. She looked tired but peaceful. The letter was short. Sarah, I won't keep sending these. This is the last one, I promise. I just wanted you to see that I'm doing the work, that I'm trying to be useful instead of destructive. You don't have to acknowledge this. You don't have to respond. I just needed you to know that you were right about me, about everything. And I'm sorry for all of it. For every day I chose myself over you, for every relationship I destroyed, for teaching you that people who love you will hurt you. I'm sorry. That's all I wanted to say. Be happy, Sarah. You deserve it. I put the letter away with the locket and the photo. Maybe someday I'd show them to Lily. Maybe I'd tell her about her grandmother, not the woman who'd hurt people, but the complicated, broken person who'd eventually tried to do better. Or maybe I wouldn't. Maybe some stories were better left in the past. When Lily was 4, she started asking questions about grandparents. She knew Alex's parents, saw Jennifer and my father regularly, but she'd noticed that there was someone missing from the family photos. "Do I have another grandma?" she asked one day. Alex and I had discussed this moment, prepared for it. I knelt down to Lily's eye level and said, Yes, you do, but she lives far away and we don't see her. Why not? Because sometimes even people in families make choices that hurt each other. And when that happens, sometimes it's healthier for everyone to have some space. Did she make bad choices? Yes, she did, but she's trying to do better now. Can I meet her someday? I looked at Alex, who nodded slightly. Maybe someday, I told Lily, when you're older and can understand better. But for now, you have lots of people who love you. Grandpa Robert and Grandma Jennifer, Grandma Kim and Grandpa Andrew, and me and Daddy. That's more than enough. Lily seemed satisfied with this answer and ran off to play. But the question stayed with me. Would there come a day when I'd let my mother meet Lily, when I'd trust her enough to be in the same room? I didn't know, and that was okay. I'd learned that healing wasn't linear, that forgiveness wasn't required, that you could acknowledge someone was trying to change while still protecting yourself and your family. The work at the non-profit continued. We expanded to 3 more cities, helped hundreds of teenagers recognize grooming behavior, provided resources for survivors. Michelle joined our board of directors. Jordan did an internship with us during his senior year. And me. I kept showing up, kept teaching, kept believing that the patterns could be broken, that daughters didn't have to become their mothers, that the cycle of hurt could end with choice and consciousness and daily commitment to do better. On Lily's 5th birthday, we had a party at our house. Friends from school, family, colleagues from the non-profit. As I watched Lily blow out her candles, surrounded by people who loved her unconditionally, I felt something shift inside me. The anger I'd carried for so long, at my mother, at Dr. Peterson, at the system that had failed me, it wasn't gone. But it had transformed into something else. Purpose, understanding, a commitment to making sure other kids didn't have to go through what I'd been through. That night, after everyone had gone home and Lily was asleep, I took out the box from Arizona. The locket, the photo, the letters. I looked at them for a long time. Then I wrote back, "Mom, I got your letters, all of them. I've thought a lot about what you said, about whether people can really change. I don't know if you've changed or if you've just gotten better at controlling the impulses that made you hurt people, but I can see that you're trying. That matters. I'm not ready to see you or to let you into my life in any meaningful way. Maybe I never will be. But I wanted you to know that I'm okay, that I have a family now, a good life, work that matters. I survived you, and more than that, I've thrived in spite of you. Thank you for the locket. I'll keep it for Lily, for when she's old enough to understand the complicated history of our family. But she'll know her great-grandmother's story, not yours. She'll know that women can be strong and kind, not just strong and destructive. Take care of yourself, Mum. Keep doing the work. Keep helping people. Maybe that's your redemption, not with me, but with all the women you're helping now." I sent the letter and felt something lift from my shoulders. Not forgiveness. I wasn't sure I'd ever fully forgive her. But maybe something close to acceptance. Acceptance that she was who she was, that I was who I was, and that we could both exist in the world without destroying each other. 6 months later, I got word through my father that my mother was sick. Cancer, stage 4. She had maybe a year, the doctors said. "She doesn't expect you to visit," my father told me. "She made that clear, but I thought you should know." I thought about it for weeks, discussed it with Alex, with my therapist, with Patricia. Everyone said the same thing. This was my choice, and whatever I chose would be okay. In the end, I went to see her. Not for her, but for me. To close the loop Jordan had talked about. She was in hospice in Phoenix, in a room that smelled like antiseptic and flowers. She looked small in the hospital bed, so different from the larger-than-life figure who dominated my childhood. "Sarah," she said when she saw me. Tears filled her eyes. "You came." "I'm not here to forgive you," I said immediately, "or to give you absolution. I'm here because I needed to see you one more time, to tell you that I survived you, that I built a life you tried to destroy, that I'm happy." "I know, your father told me, about Lily, about your work. Sarah, you're doing exactly what I never could, helping people instead of hurting them. Yes, I agreed, I am. I'm so proud of you. I know I have no right to be, but I am. We talked for 2 hours. Not about the past, I couldn't go there, but about the work she'd been doing at the shelter, about the women she'd helped, about what it felt like to finally be useful. I'll never make up for what I did, she said near the end. To you, to those boys, to everyone I hurt. But I've tried. That's all I can do now. Try. That's more than you did for most of my life, I said. So yes, it matters. When I left, she reached out and took my hand. I let her, just for a moment. Thank you for coming, she whispered, for giving me this. Goodbye, Mom, I said. And I meant it, not just as farewell, but as closure, as the ending of a chapter that had defined too much of my life. She died 3 months later. I didn't go to the funeral, but I sent flowers with a card that read, "You tried, that's something." Her ashes were scattered at the women's shelter, under a tree she'd planted during her time there. Rosa sent me photos, along with a note about how much my mother had meant to the women she'd worked with. I put the photos away with the other mementos. Maybe someday I'd show them to Lily. Maybe I'd tell her the full story, not just the fairy tale version where Grandma was all bad, but the complicated truth where she was broken and destructive and eventually, maybe, a little bit redeemed. Or maybe I'd just tell her this, that we all have choices, that hurt people, but that doesn't have to be the end of the story, that breaking cycles is possible, but it requires consciousness and effort and daily recommitment to do better. That age is just a number, but accountability is everything. That beauty without conscience is just another form of destruction, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to become the person who hurt you. I choose differently. Every day, in every moment, I choose differently. And that's enough.